Hello, my name is Ria Bales and I am the Managing Director of Bales Partners Consulting, and I am joined today by Mark Henderson, who is the CEO of the Australasian Housing Institute. So Mark, thank you so much for joining me from the other side of the world. It's great to chat
thanks, Ria.
Today. And we found, didn't we, that we shared a real interest in what we can learn from the world of sport. And I guess maybe the starting point would be an observation from me is when you look at almost any type of kind of sporting arena, that you see those coaches and those managers focusing on principally kind of two things: strategy and people management. So I guess kind of on those two bits, what do you think? Do you think that there are things that business leaders therefore can learn from the world of sport?
Look, absolutely, Ria, and it's good to be with you. Absolutely. It's really a person management business. I think sport, from what I've observed, even as a coach coaching junior sport, it's really about the ability to drive and motivate your people and head them towards a common goal. And I think it's so intrinsically connected that there are learnings that can probably work both ways, to be fair. I mean, we look at some sports now who've moved from the vernacular of the coach to, especially here in Australia, to the role of the manager. So it's more people management rather than moving the magnets on a board. So look, it's absolutely linked. I last evening, so morning here in Australia, but last evening my 11-year-old son played in his under 14 basketball team, and I watched a couple of the boys run around the court who are really skilled. I've watched them a lot during the year, but they were really demotivated. They were playing in an environment where the coach was focused on the strategy, but didn't focus on the enjoyment of the game and the cultural aspects. The thing that sport probably does better than business generally is being really clear on goals. In business, as you know, we could have 10 or 12 goals that we're trying to fulfill in any one year, whereas in sport, it's usually that bit of silverware at the end of the season. So that's enables sport to be far more, I think, laser-like focused on achievement, but it's still absolutely many common links.
And you touched on there, Mark, didn't you? I mean, we love to cheer on the underdog, don't we?
Yes.
And I think you can get teams, can't you, that are filled with world-class people that are just experts. They're at the top of their field, and they come together and they play as a team, and they're just fun. Don't they? And where conversely, you can have a team of unproven people who are kind of at the beginning of perhaps their sporting career, and somehow you get that cohesion, that team cohesion, the gel that pulls them all together, whether that's kind of motivation, it's the buy-in. There's probably a whole series of things, isn't there, that are all at work that just clicks, that gets them to perform. And I guess sports probably studies really, really hard all of those factors to what makes that team click. Yeah. Perhaps business doesn't focus quite so much.
I think the one thing that's interesting about sport is that there's that intrinsic motivation to gel as a team, especially team sport, to come together as a team and achieve a common goal. But it's also very clear in sport, maybe your role, but also the talents that you bring into that environment. So, you're the big, strong athlete, or you've got height on your side, or you're fast, or you're nimble, or you've got great hand-eye coordination. Maybe we don't spend enough time really understanding our people and their unique skill set they bring into the business environment. And that's probably a byproduct of the past, where we're being focused on the production of effective widgets. Now we're moving to the production of effective thinking and creativity and innovation. It's really hard to put a measure around those kind of skills, but it's really important for that business leader to really understand, well, what do you people bring to the table, and how do you get the best out of them?
I think one of the other things maybe that strikes me, Mark, is that the job in the sporting world of those kind of leaders and those managers is to really create an environment in where those individuals can really perform at their best. Yeah. And there's perhaps some interesting things that we might be able to translate over into the business world from that as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you look at the science around rest and recovery. So I've got my own children and my older two children who are involved in an elite level of sport for their age, and they're not only going out there and training and going to the gym and running and doing all those things to be fit, they're also being taught about nutrition and recovery and rest and wellness and all that kind of good stuff. We're probably only just really starting to embrace that in the business community. In our own business, our full-time staff, we're moving to a common working arrangement where the team works 4 days a week. And what I say to most people is maybe this is the Australian way. If you're not thinking about the weekend at lunchtime on a Friday, you're very, very unique human being. So why don't we just break the week up, give you time with your friends and your family and your hobbies, and let's focus on a concentrated effort of your performance at work, and then give you the break to be well and rested and enjoy other parts of your life, getting that balance right. So I think elite sport, particularly of what I've witnessed, does get that right. The athletes' rest is just as important as their development from a performance perspective.
Yeah, and I guess it's not just about that physical rest as well,
Correct.
is it? I mean, we talk about in the workplace, we talk about particularly when we're going through change management processes and kind of crises like maybe COVID has thrown at us. We talk about burnout. We talk about a lot of kind of those aspects. There's the kind of the well-being aspect from a kind of a physical basis, but even sports, particularly when you go into kind of professional sports, you do have, there's a lot of investment into the psychology, isn't there, and making sure that people's minds and the kind of athletes or team members' minds are exactly where they need to be. And I think there's probably something that we can learn there, isn't there, of taking a really kind of holistic approach. And I do think that kind of the transactional, the old employee relationship, that transactional one, which is you do work and I pay you, I think is just, it's completely outdated. That's gone. It's dead.
Completely.
It's, it is much more of a full relationship where in actual fact, you can't determine or define between work and between life. People just bring themselves to work, don't they? And therefore taking a much more kind of holistic view is probably where we're heading. Yeah,
look, I had exposure, Ria, about maybe 10 years ago to a elite sporting environment here in Australia, and the head of the sports science department was showing me some of the tools that they use to track athletes. Let's call it well-being. It wasn't called well-being at the time, but it was really about their well-being. So how well did they sleep? What were their levels of stress? How did their body feel? How did they feel when they were practicing? Etc. So there's a whole number of metrics that they used for the athlete as the athlete came into the sporting environment on a daily basis. So if they found that the athlete had a poor night's rest or felt sore or was feeling, demotivated or whatever the case may be, the organisation could wrap their arms around that individual and actually give them on-demand changes to their work environment, ostensibly, so they could perform at their optimal, or put some support around them to do something different to get their motivations levels at a different level, or whatever it may have been. And that rings true too for people who bring their personal life into the work environment. I know in my past, I recall one of my teams that I ran, I had an amazing kind of performer in that team, spent 2 or 3 days, and we could sense from a team perspective that she was really low in her general motivation and outlook perspective. She was very optimistic and she started to be pessimistic, etc. And when we kind of gave her that support, she was able to say, hey, I've got an issue. And the issue was her marriage was breaking down. So she was going from home in that stressful environment, and we're expecting her to arrive on Monday and run at 110%. Well, that just doesn't work. So I think modern day businesses have to work out, and modern day managers and leaders have to work out, how do you ensure you know your people are at their best when they arrive at work, and if they don't, what do you do about it? How do you support them in getting better?
And I think it's quite interesting. Maybe we jump from that to that drive for kind of for inches, for tiny amounts of improvement. And I think kind of Formula One is fascinating for that.
Yeah.
The lengths that they go to in the data and the analysis, they're driving for milliseconds of improvements. There's probably, again, a lot that we can learn around the kind of the data analysis and finding where's waste and how can we make things much, much more efficient.
Yeah, look, totally agree. I think the uniqueness about Formula One is they race around the same tracks and they're trying to get efficient and faster, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very, very defined environment. It appears that the governing body for Formula One keeps everyone really constricted in their level of innovation. I think that's the challenge for business leaders, is to realise that the world of the businesses that we run is very hard necessarily to constrain it to the one track or the one way of thinking. So you do need to have the data to support your decision making, but you've also got to allow that kind of human instinct to flourish, whether it's innovation, creativity, and the like. So Formula One, absolutely, their ability to extract performance out of something so minutiae, and every millisecond counts. It is really unique, and I'd hate to see what their data bills are at the end of each month, but must have the world's biggest data farms around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot if you don't mind. Maybe your top 1 or 2 tips, maybe, of the things that maybe business leaders that you think business leaders should be looking to the sporting world and really learning from.
Yeah, look, I think the first one is the fact that human beings can't perform at 110% of the time. So I think the business leader needs to take a really empathetic view on the individuals within their business. And I think the sporting world has realised that. I noticed here in Australia, and it may be the same in Europe, or we may be behind the ball a little bit, but I'm hearing a lot of elite coaches talking about empathy and connection. And, these are coaches who are coaching teams who are playing effectively blood sports, high contact, bodies hitting body kind of sport. Now they're talking about empathy, connection and love. It's quite unique. So I think the sporting world's showing that to get the best out of people, it's just not about bigger, stronger, faster. It's about the empathy and connection with your people. So I think we can learn a lot from that. I think the other thing the sporting world teaches the business world is the really importance of in the intrinsic motivation of teams focused around a common goal. And again, we at times will have multiple goals for the achievement of a business, but it's really making sure your people are really clear on what it is that you're trying to deliver. And it may not just be profitability, Ria. It might be a whole host of things. It's member engagement or customer engagement, it's satisfaction and loyalty, etc. But I think being really clear on that, knowing what your premiership looks like, so to speak, is really, really important. And I think that's where maybe some businesses and some business leaders maybe some struggle sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I might add one more to those tips as well, Mark,
Please.
which might be that kind of the focus on the strengths. Understand your team well enough that you know where your strengths are and you know where you can play to. I think as well is really helpful. We could go on for hours and hours and hours, couldn't we?
We could. Thank you, Ria. It's been good to catch up.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark, and have a good day.